So today's session is going to be continuing on from last week, really. So talking about elevation again. We won't discuss over direction too heavily today. It will crop up a little bit. So I'll tell you what over direction is and what we basically use it for. But as we can see, we're going to do a long graduation, which doesn't make any sense, does it? Because it's actually a square layer. So I'll get into that. I get a little bit too bogged down in the names of the haircuts, as you're going to notice over the next couple of months. I'm going to change that because it's annoying me. We're going to do a square layer, okay? 1 second. Square layer with some forward graduation, okay? Or face framing, so framing around the face. So anything from sort of cheekbones and down, it's your bangs areas that Americans call it bangs, or they'd call it, what would you call it?
Curtains.
Curtains, yeah, nice little curtainy fringes. So how high or how short we want to go using the facial symmetry. So we're going to talk about the face, what the face actually does, the bone structures of the face, etc. What is elevation? What does elevation create? Can anybody remember from last week what elevation creates? Not you, because you know.
Weight.
Weight. Good. Who said that? That was Andrea, was it?
Yeah.
Thick. Nice. So elevation creates our weight. Perfect. So we remember from last week that the heaviest form of weight is 0 degrees of elevation. If I shuffle this in a little bit. And we use our little elevation chart here. So anything that we're doing at 0 degrees of elevation or not lifting the hair off the back of the person's neck or her back is creating the heaviest form of weight, okay? So as soon as we lift the hair off of the back of the guest, we are taking weight out of our hair, yeah? So anything from 0 degrees up to 89 degrees of elevation, we are taking weight out technically, okay? As we said last week, people talk about graduation as a build-up of weight because the hair is stacking on top of one another. So as we did last week where we were looking at the amount of hair that reaches down to that point of interest or our point of line work or graduation, the hair is getting longer and longer as it comes up the top of the head. Okay, so you will hear people talking about graduation as a build-up of weight. Now that isn't incorrect because you're stacking hair on top of each other. So technically the weight is building up on your overall line or your overall outline shape, but you are removing weight from the hair. That's how it can get a little bit confusing sometimes. Okay, but if you imagine that how we were discussing last week, as in use it as an example, say Carly and I work in a salon together, I do a graduated bob, which the graduation is going to be in here somewhere as we discussed last week. So graduation in the base. Say my elevation of graduation was really low because she may have had quite a low density of hair, and then she said it's too heavy. All Carly would have to do is lift my elevation up somewhere into there to counteract what I did. Okay, so hopefully that rings a bell from last week. When you want to start taking weight out of hair in terms of a layering perspective, or stop stacking hair on top of each other, we want to go from 90 degrees of elevation and up. Okay, so however heavy the hair is or how thick the hair is how high we're going to lift the hair. So back again, say me and Carly are in the same salon, and she wants, I do my layering at 90 degrees of elevation out of the side of the guest's head. So my elevation is in here, and it's too heavy. She comes back a week later when I'm on my day off, and she says, Rob's done it, it's too heavy, take a little bit more weight out, please. All Carly's going to have to do is lift my layering somewhere into this point here, okay? That's going to control more weight removal, okay? So elevation, as Andrea said, elevation creates weight, okay? Creates weight. So whether we're building weight or removing weight, it's just how high or low we lift it, okay? Over direction creates your shape, Okay, so anyone know what over direction is? Probably not, because we've not ever touched on it. Anyone have a guess of what over direction could be? Shape. Okay, so over direction is basically, in a nutshell, pulling hair away from its natural fall. Okay, so this piece of hair here that I've sectioned out in my radial section is falling naturally where it wants to go. Okay, it doesn't want to fall. It don't want to fall back here. It doesn't want to go here. If I just let it go, it's going to fall into that position. Okay, so that is something we call natural.
I'm losing.
You're right.
Rob.
Yes. You're right, Urilla.
Rob.
Can you hear me?
Rob.
Yes.
Losing you for some reason.
Okay, can everybody else hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. It's your
Yeah.
time to do you there, Yuri.
I'm going to switch. Can you just enter me back in?
Yeah, go
I
on.
think it's the signal in the area.
Okay, go off and then come back in. So natural fall is pretty much as it says. We are just letting the hair fall naturally. Okay, so over direction is where we pull the hair away from its natural fall to increase length or decrease length. So say she has quite thick hair in the back, but quite fine hair in the front. We're going to want to take a lot of weight out of the back, so our elevation could come here with our layering to take the weight out. But we almost want to create more shape in the front and push some weight forwards. So all of these pieces here, we could pull back into here. So where we're working at the natural fall out the back, we're then over directing the sides into the back to increase the length into the front. Okay, so we're not going to focus heavily on the over direction because I want to do that when we're back. Okay, but elevation creates your weight, over direction creates your shape, and that is all you need to know about cutting. It's not all you need to know about cutting, but that's the fundamentals of cutting. Okay, so elevation creates your weight, over direction creates your shape. Now we're going to start with our layering. Okay, so I'm going to shift this back. And what do layers do? Can anyone tell me what layering does to your hair? Has anyone got layers? And does anyone
Add volume to your hair.
add volume? Yeah, absolutely. Anything else?
Shape.
Shape? Yeah, perfect. They can add some shape. The reason they create volume in your hair is because you're taking the weight out of the bottom of the hair. So say somebody has their hair all down on one line, for instance, and it's very bulky. You're just taking that bulk from in here and you're removing it. So that is pretty much why it gives you a little bit of shaping in the internal shape of the hair. Also why it gives you a little bit more volume. Okay. So this first layering technique is called a square layer. People call it a long graduation. Technically, that's incorrect, but we're going to dust over that for now. And we're going to move on. So my first two sections are in. I've got my radial sections from my profile on both sides. And all I'm going to do is literally stand at the back of the guest, making sure our head is absolutely bolt upright. We want to have a 90-degree angle between the chin and the chest line. Okay, so if she's texting or reading a book, lift her head up. Okay, if she then looks up because the light starts flickering, put her head down. You want that 90-degree angle between the chin and the chest the whole time. Okay, and we're going to start working through our fingers and holding the hair in our fingers. So even though we were working things on our one length or lines below shoulders through our comb, that is the only time we're going to hold it in the comb. So we now want to have ourselves with everything in one hand, and this hand is our holding hand. Okay, so scissors, as we said last week, I will run through it again. Your wedding ring finger on the opposite hand goes in there. Little finger goes on your finger rest. These two fingers go in your little divots in here. If you've got divots, you might not have the divots, and then your thumb in there, okay? If you have them dead straight, it's difficult to work. So twist your scissors in a bit to your palm, and then this little finger pushes the scissors up into these two fingers so that you're got a lot of stability, and then just wallop your scissors, okay? Then comb in the same hand, and we're going to use the fine end of the comb, okay? So we want more tension. We want maximum tension when we're working with our layering. And we're going to stand in the back, okay? So her head's up, her head's in the same position. I'm in a nice position. My body's all nice and straight. I'm going to keep my head up, okay? And we're just going to work. So imagine we've put our one length in first of all, or our line below shoulders. And I'm going to run my layering up and connect my shape. So small end of the comb, comb 4 or 5 times before you actually lift up so that you get all of the hair out of the roots, and then fold the hair over, then fingers in, and we can run the shape together, okay? And we're not looking for our guideline from our one length, because otherwise our layers would go way too short. This is all in consultation. So when we consult with our client, we see how much layering they want and how much weight removal they want from their hair. I'm only going to dust it because I wasn't going to take the block too short. But I always see somebody in the groups do their line and then they lift their one length up and they use that as their guide. So they take off a load of hair. Just dust it down, okay, today when you have a go later. So we want to come in, run our shape, and then find where we're going and run our line, okay? And then when we drop it down, we can see where that layer falls. If I show you into the screen, if I move out the way, we've got our line in here, and then our layering just sits quite soft, okay? So we know it's layering because I'm lifting it above 90 degrees, okay? I'm actually lifting it to 180 degrees. So it's quite a light little layer. It's quite a soft layer that we can use on somebody. If somebody wants quite a delicate, soft layer and not much layering, this is quite a nice technique to use because it doesn't take all the bulk away from the back behind the ears, okay? And then we're going to go to the opposite side of our radial section and lift a bit up from the section beforehand, and again, keep our nice tension in the hair and run the shape. Pick up my guide from the right-hand side and cut it away. And my outline again, as you see, drops away, okay? So that's pretty much our guideline in. We're now going to turn her to the side, and the radial comes all the way back, okay? Oh, I'll take these 2 pins. So the radial comes back into the shape. All right, Gracie, you've come off mute. You all right?
Yeah, sorry, I don't know what happened there, just cut out.
Sorry, don't worry. Thought you might have had a question. Also, if anyone has questions as we're going through, anything they don't understand, anything they want to bring up, please do let me know, okay? If there's something you're not getting, then let me know, okay? So the radial section was in here, and that's now come all the way back into the base. And I'm going to take vertical sections now from the very word go. So if I start on my head sheets, that could be a good idea. We have our radial here. And radial up in that one. And then everything in the back section, we're going to work vertically, okay? All the way through into the front. So it's going to basically come round and connect with my radial section on the left and connect with my radial section on the right, okay? And everything we're doing is just being lifted up into that 180 degrees of elevation, okay? By lifting up to here, we almost look to protect our overall outline, okay? So the overall outline is now being looked after because we're going to leave a corner in the shape. So everything comes up and every single section that we're working on gets lifted to 180 degrees. So say for instance, Andrew and I, we're in salon together, and I've done my square layer all up to 180 degrees. And the client comes back in next week when I'm off and says to Andrea, it's too light. What could she do? It's too light, what Rob's done. What can she do?
Going down.
Lift it lower. Perfect. Excellent. So all you got to do when you're thinking of weight is how high do I lift it? And do I need to lift it higher or do I need to lift it lower? That's all done in your consultation. So if she's got really, really fine hair, you're not going to want to lift it too high at all. Okay. But then again, if she's got really thick hair, you're going to want to lift it higher. Also, you can start to tweak when we get a little bit further in. These are the techniques that LHAA like us to teach. When we get a bit further in, we're going to start talking about how to remove weight in certain areas of the head and combine a shape so that you're not just doing the same boring haircut every single time. So somebody may have more density down here, but less density this side than this side. So we need to counteract our elevation throughout the haircut. So we'll get onto those, okay? And making people feel like you're actually doing a haircut that suits them as opposed to just a haircut, okay? So we're vertical section and we're gonna turn her to the side. And we're gonna come and stand in the left-hand side of her or the right-hand side, whichever you feel comfortable with. Some people say stand in the left, then the right. I say stand in the left the whole time. I don't care where you stand, as long as the haircut looks good, I don't mind. So we're now going to lift up from the base, and that section of hair that we've cut in our radial section is now going to be our guide for the back. So again, really nice clean tension. Lift up, and there's my guide. It's lucky. And lift up all the way to 180 degrees, find your guide and take the hair. Okay? And then we're just going to work vertically all the way through to behind the ears. So if I twist her back, we're going to take section number 2 in here. Okay? And then I'm going to come back to the side so you can see. Section 2, we lift it up with section number 1. Time that. And we're going to lift everything up to 180 degrees. So again, lift up. That's the tension we want to see the whole time, okay? So no messiness or untidy bits in the section of hair. It's difficult to hold hair straight away in your first couple of weeks. So that's why we work on sectioning first of all, and we work on blow drying and things and styling, because you start to get used to holding things in the same hand and then transferring things from different hands, which is really important in hairdressing. But don't worry too much if you don't feel comfortable with it now. You will start to feel comfortable quite soon. So again, we lift up and everything up to 180 degrees, and we're going to run our line. Okay. So now we want to do something just to double check that piece of layering, okay? And that's called cross-checking, okay? Cross-checking is a vital part of hairdressing. And the reason is it makes us check that we're doing it okay. So the rule of cross-checking is that we go against the shape of where we're cutting or against the sectioning pattern that we've worked. So we've worked vertically, so I'm going to cross-check horizontally, okay? But the most important part is that we have to pull it to where we cut the hair. So if I have cut this all at 180 degrees, I'm going to cross-check it at 180 degrees, okay? If I'm cutting it here, I want to cross-check it there. If I'm cutting it right round by her nose, I want to cross-check it by her nose, okay? It's so important. The times I've seen people, or the times when I was working, I cross-checked my shape in the wrong position, cut a load of hair off, and then ruined it, basically, which wasn't good. So we take our horizontal section, and I'm going to lift it up to 180 degrees, and hopefully it will be square. Good. Okay. Makes sense? If it doesn't make sense, please do let me know, or please come over and let me know and we can correct it, I suppose. Could we? Does it make sense? Does make sense. Good. So now we're going to go on to the opposite side. So I'm going to come back to the center, back into section number 1, making sure it's straight because I'm recording it, and move on to the opposite side. So section 1, we're going to pick up section number 2. Okay. And I stand in the same side. Some people change and stand in different sides. It's completely up to you how you work. I find it easier pulling and pushing. Other people find it easier standing on the opposite side to where you're working. Which side do you stand, Claire? Do you stand opposite side? So you'd come around and stand in there and pull towards you. Yeah. See, however you feel comfortable. I stand the same side. I find it more easy. So I find it easier pushing than pulling.
I find if you do it, if they stand the same side,
yeah, it goes round
more
up.
towards them.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, try standing this side. Try standing the opposite side. So you're pulling it towards yourself. But however you feel comfortable, really do make sure that you're not pulling it towards yourself there. So everything's coming up at 180 degrees fully. Okay, and then it's the same process. So comb 3, 4, 5 times before you go. Just to make sure your tension is really nice. There is no shame in that. I think people see hairdressers, just whop the hair up in their fingers with one comb, and they must look professional by doing that. I disagree. You're always going to find bits of hair, so comb 3 or 4 times before you go, and you'll get everything. I would rather you comb 10 times before you do it and have a clean line than comb once and miss bits. Make sense? Good. So again, her head's up the whole time, yeah? So we're not pushing her head down. She's staying where she is. These people come to us for a reason, okay? Make sure their head is in the right place. You've got to look after your body the most importantly. It must be the absolute key for you is keeping your posture, keeping your body, because otherwise you're going to get to work in the industry as long as I have, and not be able to do it anymore, or not be able to stand up. So I would say move their head around. If they have their head down, put it up. I've probably told you what I say about dentists before. Dentists, they don't say, open your mouth, and then you shut it, and they're all right with that. They say, open your mouth, and you've got to keep your mouth open, haven't you? And they tell you, and they open it. My dentist opens my mouth anyway, so just open your mouth, for God's sake. Getting a bit off topic, isn't I? So now I'm going to cross check. So I'm going to come through horizontally. And I'm going to lift up to 180 degrees again. And hopefully this is square. Good. Okay. Does that back piece make sense? Anyone got any questions about the back section of hair? Or does it make quite a bit of sense, really? If we have a look at our layers. Looks right, actually. So now we're going to come on the sides. So the sides are the same. We're just going to work vertically all the way forwards and lift everything up to that one point. Okay, so for this, we want to stand in the back, again, keeping our head up. And however confident you feel, you can have as big a sections or as small sections as you want in here. I'm going to split these down into 2. So I'm going to take a piece in front of my radial section. So in there, and I'm going to take a piece from my radial. So I keep my sections really clean in here. So I don't like just picking bits up and seeing where it is. I like to have my section in place. So there's my next piece. Okay, so I've got my guideline in here, and I've got my next piece in here, and standing in the back of her, we are going to, again, comb 3, 4, 5 times before we go, get our tension really nice and clean, and then start to lift. So same as our first section, or our first little piece on the radial, we're standing in the back and just running that line forwards. Okay, excellent. And then the last little bit we can just lift up and if there is any hair to cut. Generally, there's not much to cut in here. On your blocks, there probably will be to start with, but wow, here there's a lot. Always check it, because you may lose it. And then we want to cross check. So if I've worked vertically, how am I going to cross check? Anyone tell me?
Horizontally.
Horizontally, and where am I going to pull it?
To the top.
To the top. Good, sweet, straight up. Excellent. So we're going to go horizontal. And what am I going to see? Is the line going to be flat, square? Is it going to be slightly curved that way? Or is it going to be slightly curved that way? What should I see?
Square.
Where? Good. Let's see. Ooh, pulled it right off. Oh, pushed it down. Oh. Ooh. If it's not square, I'll stop the recording pretty quick. So we lift it up and we're good. So we can see that that is quite square. My fingers don't really go too straight, but excellent. So then we're going to come onto the next side and take another little section just in front of my radial or a next piece, and then a section from behind the radial just to get cracking. And again, her head's in the same place. I come back to stand in the back of the head or the back of the person, and nice tension up. Find my guideline and get rid of it. And then the last little bit is all up into the top and run the shape. Excellent. So that is pretty much your soft layer. It's called a square layer. It's called a long graduation, really, which does. Why does it not make sense that it's called a long graduation? Can anybody tell me? Anyone ever think and say why it doesn't make much sense that it's called a long grad?
Because it can be done to any hair length.
It can be done to any hair length. You're right, actually. It can be done to any hair length, but that's not what I'm looking for. Can anybody tell me why it's not a graduation? Have a think. We may be getting a bit too technical here. I think I'm getting a bit too technical. I don't want to scare you off. Why is it not graduation?
Because we're reaching more than 90
Yeah.
degrees and we're reducing the weight.
Good. So we're lifting more than 90 degrees, yeah? So a long graduation, technically speaking, would be long hair lifting it below 90 degrees. That's my image of it, and obviously Yulia's, because she was right. That's what I think. Anything layering, anything above here is layering. So a square layer is a better name than a long graduation, because a long graduation doesn't make sense. So you're counteracting every form of elevation knowledge that I've ever known, and I don't like that. So hey ho. So that is your long graduation. Now we're going to talk about that is your long graduation. Do you hear that? That is your square layer. Yeah, that just completely contradicted myself. So now we're going to talk about facial framing, okay, and the symmetry of our bone structure. So when you want to do any form of fringe work or for graduation or sorry, Claire's just walked in the room, it's just put me off my stride. When you're thinking of side fringes for graduation, little bangsies, little curtains, as we call it, really, they're quite difficult to do and quite difficult to get a technique for. And if you see anything on YouTube or Instagram or Facebook, all of these people are trying to make a name for themselves by getting a new technique out there. They make it so confusing, don't they? Do you think they make it confusing? Some of them, I personally think they're very confusing. Say when you're doing a full fringe and they twist it and twist it again and they twist it again and then cut it and then it all falls and looks beautiful. I don't think that works. I've never tried it. I don't know if it works. If it does, let me know. That does work. It does work. God. So I'm going to delete that bit from the video. But I don't think that's the most easy way to work it. We're not going to go for fringes today. We're gonna wait a bit for fringes, but I'm going to do some forward graduation with you guys and just show you how I work it and how I think is the better way to work. Okay, so if I shift you in again, and we're going to go for my forward-facing face here. So every single time an artist draws a face, or a portrait artist draws a face, that's right, and a portrait artists do portraits, landscape artists do landscapes, don't they? I was thinking the other way around. They do lines in the face, don't they? So they basically start with that one down there, and then they do that one across there. Yeah. So if somebody is, if you've got a person who is facing like that, and they want the person to look over here towards me, they'll do a line in there, and then they'll do a line in there. Okay. And the reason they do that is to basically combine your symmetry of your face. So if we're looking at symmetry in here, they'll have the point of the nose there, they'll have the cheekbones in here, and then they'll have another cheekbone in there, and it can allow them to pretty much start working on the facial features and on the facial shape. They'll then have another line in here where your eyes will look to go. So your eyes in here, and it helps them to get the proportions of the face correct. Now, I'm not a very good drawer, but yeah, get. I'm not a great drawer, but this is what I envisage for hairdressing. So when this other line in here comes through, and then we've got the lip line on here, so we can draw a set of lips on there, I don't know, and then we get another line come down in the base that we can have the jawline working on with a big bulbous chin. Okay, so everything they do is formulated to be working with your bone structures, and I think that should be the same with hair, or that's what I do. So you've got your cheekbones in here and in here, okay, and that nose is a bit low, really. That should be in there to the point of our nose. But this line will hit from your corner of your ear, so the top of your ears, down your cheekbones. I've got glasses on, so I can't fit it. From the top of your ear, down your cheekbones, into the corner of your nose, or into the point of your nose. Okay, there's our first point of symmetry. Our second point from the top of the ears comes down, but on the bottom of your cheekbones. So your cheekbones are quite thick, really, depending on if people have thick cheekbones, maybe you don't. But coming down and hitting the corner of your lips. Okay, so your corner of your lips gives you another bit of symmetry, and then finally along your jawline from the top of your ears and into your point of your chin. Okay, so those three areas from the tops of your ears. Oh, I've not done that very well. I've done that terribly. I'm going to do that again. And into your lips, and then into your jawline. My drawing's off today. So there's your points of symmetry. So what we want to look for when we're doing our forward graduation is we use the points of the nose, the corners of the lips, and the jawline to get our symmetry. But when we're doing side fringes, we can also use the symmetrical areas of the face as our guideline. So we're going to have eyebrows up here. Okay, so however somebody has their eyebrows done, let's get rid of that unibrow. However anyone has their eyebrows, generally when you go and have your eyebrows done or your eyebrows threaded, I've heard from my partner, I haven't done it myself, I've heard that they will basically do a point in here, and run a triangle down into your point of your nose. Charlotte, you may be able to talk about this a little bit tomorrow when we're coming. I know you've done your beauty. You're a beautician, aren't you? Do they?
Yeah, this is when they teach you at college. It's very basic. They teach you the frame shapes, and we get taught to do it in symmetry with your nose. But you use a pen between your forehead and then to each corner of your eyebrow.
Sick, nice. That's quite.
Or you can use an orange stick, one or the other. But yeah, you just line it up from the center point of your nose to the center of obviously your forehead where your eyebrows start, and then to each end of each eyebrow. So very similar to that. We just don't draw on people.
Yeah, yeah. You're not going to draw on people in hairdressing either. Well, I don't think you will. You might do. But say, for instance, she's got a side parting in here, and she wants her fringe to come down and sit somewhere around in there. We're going to pull that fringe over to here and mask it along this row. Okay. And similarly, if we want it to sit the other side, we're going to be parallel with the line from her cheekbone, from her corner of her eyebrow to the point of the nose. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. We're going to go through this a little bit more detail when we do come back. This table doesn't push back. So this is now how I personally work my forward graduation. Okay. And I think it works perfectly, but it is really difficult to get the job done first of all. Okay. So you'll see a lot of people will say, just pull that side over here, this side over there, and it works. Okay. It does. I'm not gonna say it doesn't, it does, but there's not as much sort of involvement with the face, I don't think, when you do that. You're pretty much just flowing the hair across to another side of the head to keep length, which I think there's a better way. And I think this is the better way. So I'm going to show you. So I'm going to take two sections, very fine sections from the front of the guest's head. Okay. And pin those away. Only ever go 3 sections back. Okay. Any more sections than that, and you need to be elevating, or you're going to lose control of your overall line in the base. So section number 1. Also, what I would say is don't try this at home. Okay, this little section. Today, I would like you guys to have a play on your mannequins and to do some layering, for instance. But with your forward graduation or shaping around the face, we will do this tomorrow in salon. I don't want you doing it now because someone's going to come up here with it or come into the shape in the side. So I'd rather we did this ourselves in salon. Okay, so I'm going to push her head back and I'm going to stand directly in the front. Okay, my first section is going to be a piece of hair the same width as the person's nose. Okay, so a tiny little piece of hair, which is just the width of my mannequin's nose. Okay, and in here, I'm going to choose the length that I want to go to, and I'm going to just cut it. Okay, now if you want something to sit and bounce, you've got to leave length. So if we want to have it on our cheekbones, we're going to cut it around about the jawline. Okay, so that it's got enough length to spring and bounce. Okay, I'm doing this long so that we can do a demo tomorrow because we're back in tomorrow. So now I'm going to stand directly in front of her and I'm going to use the point of her chin as my angle guide or the guideline for my angle. Okay, so I'm going to pull down with the same elevation. So my elevation is just off the point of her nose. Okay, and I'm going to angle my fingers down to the floor and my knuckles up to the point of her chin. Okay, I've got my little guide in there from my central point, and I'm going to knock that out, keep a nice tension, point down to the floor, angle my knuckle up to the guest's nose, and that is going to ensure that I connect and keep my length in the base. Okay, I only really want to frame this front bit. I don't want to be coming into the length in here. So the hair that falls here is a big point. I just want to take off that point. I don't want to come all the way back into my shape. Okay, so by pulling the hair forwards, we control that area, but also by pointing my fingers down to the floor on this side really helps. So the rest of it, pull it in, fingertips down to the floor again, knuckles up to the guest's nose, and we run our line through. Okay, then come to the opposite side and it switches. So your knuckles now come down to the floor and your fingertips come up to the point of the guest's nose. So tuck your elbow into your body and control where we're going. And then connect that the same in with the bit of the sidebone area or the bit in between or above in front of the ear, sorry. And run down. And then finally run that off. Okay. So there if we have a little look, I've got my front pieces coming a little bit shorter. Can't see it, it's such a fine section. But we're going to go back another one anyway. So section number 2, again, very fine section working back. But what can I do here? So if I pull everything down to the same point, it's going to be quite heavy. So what could I do moving back in section number 2? If I want it flicking off the face and quite light, and my first piece of elevation that I've done is, what one can I use? If I use this one here. So my first piece of elevation was in here, okay? If everything comes to that point, it's going to be quite heavy, okay? So my overall goal, what I want to see is that the hair falls down and starts flicking away, okay? And then we get another little flicks down here, flicks up there, and then the length to sit in. So what could I do to make it a little bit lighter in section number 2?
Lower the elevation.
Maybe. Or what else could I do? If I
Make
want
it higher.
higher, good, exactly. So we could then lift section number 2 just that little bit higher, and then section number 3 a little bit higher even still, okay? So each time when we're lifting up, we're creating just a little bit more of a lighter feel to the hair. So exactly the same technique, but here I'm going to run a little bit higher with my elevation. So first elevation was here, second elevation is in here, okay? And now I don't need to really focus too much on posting my fingers into the point of her nose or into the point of her chin, because I've got my guideline in there. So I'm just going to be running any hair that falls over the top of my guideline and start trimming that away. Okay, standing in the same position as usual and run that line. And then if we take our third section, so another tiny little section back, I will start to now come into my layering. So I'm now going to come and lift it just above 90 degrees of elevation from the front of the guest. So again, I want the elevation to continue through the shape. So I'm now going to lift up to what is 90 degrees, but her head is back, so it's still underneath 90, and just run my line through. Okay, so you'll start to pick up your guide, and there won't be much hair to cut because we're only really dusting this shape through. Okay, and also the reason why we want to control the elevation off the front is because we've got layers in here. Anything back from this point is all layered. Okay, so we want to have this layering connect with this piece of forward graduation. So if we think of our 3D shape, if she got electrocuted and the hair all stood out on end, what are we going to see? We're going to, if we had everything down to this point, it would be a big block and then a big corner up to our layering. But now because we've elevated, it comes round and will connect with our layering in the top. So it's inevitably going to be a much cleaner and a much better formulation of our layers. Okay. So then when we have another little look through at what we have created, obviously it's going to be a longer version. Obviously it's going to be a longer version of our bangs area. But sorry, I've dropped about 4 combs today. Do apologize. But we have a little bit of softness in the front that allows that front piece to combine and connect. So it's got all the little zhuzhy bit and then flicks away and flicks down into the look. Okay. And then when she does that thing that most girls do, looks good, doesn't it? So she's in a club. Whoop. Looks quite good, doesn't it? So you've got your little layering, everything's come away from this base. All your layering in here is nice and soft and nice and delicate, but it doesn't look blocky. It doesn't look all thick and under controlled. The forward graduation just gives us that little bit of stability out of the front and taking off that corner slightly. But yeah, perfect. So that is basically your first layer that we want you guys to do. In relation to 4 graduation, as I say, don't do that at home because I don't want you feeling like you're not knowing what you're doing. I'd rather be there when you're doing it so that we can do it together. In relation to the head sheet, there it is. In relation to elevation, creates your weight. Over direction creates your shape. From next week, we're going to start going into over direction. Maybe not next week, maybe the week after, because we might start doing some color next week. Everyone likes doing color, so we'll do some color next week. But yeah, basically think about the face shape, think about the bone structure. The bone structure will always connect. Everyone's face is pretty similar in terms of their bones. The faces are very different, aren't they? Obviously, everyone looks different, but the bone structures generally are going to be there. Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording.